Eric walked over to the table and smiled at Cillian. "Thank you, Mr. Witt, but my girlfriend, I'll take her myself." Cillian sat still as if turned into a statue. In the car, Eric asked me, "Who is this guy?" "My ex." I instinctively lit a cigarette. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Eric almost yanked the steering wheel. "Oh, your old lover. Will he misunderstand our relationship?" I shook my head. "It's okay. Just a chance encounter," I thought. But I never expected it to be more than just a meeting. When I returned to the residential area, I met Cillian again in the elevator. I stared at him. "Don't say we're going the same way." "I'm going home," Cillian said. The elevator stopped, and he paused in front of the door opposite mine. Surprisingly, the fingerprint lock actually opened for him. Cillian's dark eyes looked at me. "Good night, Josie." I forcefully closed my door. "I want to move to a new house." I messaged Oded. "Do you have any extra houses?" "What's wrong?" he asked in a daze. I told him about Cillian. "So, he's your ex?" Oded chuckled strangely. "No wonder he's been chasing after me to cooperate. The main point is, do you have any houses?" I asked expressionlessly. "It's too late," Oded said. "He's now a partner in our subsidiary company. We signed a contract not long ago." "Look at it positively," Oded said compassionately. "You'll be in charge of him in the future." The next day at the company, Cillian was indeed there, deceiving the people in the company with his appearance. Others were discussing organizing a welcome ceremony for the new leader. I went into the office alone, closed the door to avoid seeing him. At noon, someone knocked on the door. Thinking it was Eric, I opened the door only to find Cillian. "Oded asked me to bring this to you." He smiled and handed me a lunchbox. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, I had to accept it. One taste and I knew Cillian was lying. This was clearly made by himself. I didn't know what Cillian was up to. He suddenly appeared, infiltrating every aspect of my life and work, yet saying nothing. It wasn't until later that I saw Rachel Bailey. Not wanting to run into Cillian at the company, I went to the charity foundation the next day. After realizing that the money I earned would never be spent in my lifetime, I deliberately established this place to support the underprivileged and those in difficulty. I didn't expect to see Rachel among the people seeking help today. Perhaps it was because she didn't expect that I was the boss of the charity foundation. A look of embarrassment appeared on her face. "You're not dead, and your life seems pretty good," she sneered. "Aren't you supposed to have a terminal illness?" I asked her, "Why aren't you dead yet?" "It's all fake," Rachel said. "But not to deceive you, mainly to deceive my family. If I didn't make myself look sick, my stepmother would have killed me a long time ago. Josie, sometimes I really envy orphans like you." My face turned cold. "Then I wish you were an orphan in your next life. Eric, escort this young lady out." We locked eyes for a moment, and Rachel shrugged. "Please help me, Josie, Miss Pugh. I'm pregnant now and really need money." I said, "You should find Cillian. What does he have to do with this?" Rachel was puzzled. "He has long followed a Buddhist monk and renounced worldly life. Who knows if he's still alive?" She chuckled. "He's infatuated with you. He gave up everything for you." I wanted to ask her what she meant by that, but I held back. Rachel's words were not trustworthy. But she continued, "We had an agreement. He would help me take over the family property, and I would help him seek revenge. But once you died, he refused to continue no matter what." "What do you mean?" I finally couldn't help but ask. "After Cillian went bankrupt, his family's company was acquired by the Voyage Group, and the chairman of the Voyage Group is my dad. We have the same enemy." Rachel said. "He pretended to be my boyfriend to gain my dad's support and become the vice president of the Voyage Group. We never dated. He never liked me." She smirked maliciously at me again. "By the way, you must don't know that thing. After that earthquake, Cillian thought you were dead, and shortly after, he attempted suicide by cutting his wrist. He felt he should die with you. When he was found, he had cut his wrist more than a dozen times. The doctors barely managed to save him, but that hand was almost useless." I stood there dumbfounded, feeling like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. Later, he still found evidence of the Voyage Group's illegal activities, and my dad was finally ousted by us. I wanted him to marry me and inherit the remaining assets of the company, but he refused and insisted on becoming a monk. If he hadn't left, I wouldn't have later encountered a scammer and been cheated out of all my money. At this point, Rachel's expression twisted again. "This scammer, that damn scammer, don't let me find you again," she screamed, clutching her head, falling into a frenzy, smashing her head against the wall. I quickly called for emergency assistance. When the staff arrived, they said she was a patient who had escaped from a mental hospital, and the hospital was looking for her everywhere. Rachel refused to leave, angrily shouting at me, "Josie, help me. I want to go out. I want to kill that scammer." I waved to the staff. "Take her away quickly." When I returned to the residential area, I saw Cillian. He was sitting in front of my door, legs curled up, with a vacant look in his eyes. It was not until he saw me that a glimmer appeared in his eyes. "Yuri back," he said. Without saying anything, I directly grabbed his wrist and pulled down the layers of overlapping bracelets. The area that was covered was indeed filled with winding and hideous scars. Cillian tried to hide his hand in his sleeve. My heart sank completely. An unnamed anger made me raise my hand and slap him directly sharply. Cillian Witt, are you out of your mind? Cillian's head tilted back from the slap, but he said nothing. Instead, he grabbed my hand and gently pressed it against his cheek. I thought you would never come back. Half of his face was swollen, but he still held onto my hand tightly, rubbing it lightly against his face. Josie, I was wrong to you before, but in the future, can you never leave me again? I stood in front of him, looking down at him coldly for a while. Cillian, I said, I won't care about any of your grievances. And I already have a boyfriend. You've met him. After saying that, I slowly pulled back my hand. Cillian still held on tightly. We locked eyes and tugged at each other for a few moments, and then, a tear suddenly slid down from his eye. He cried. He still didn't let go, but his eyes seemed to be completely shattered. Cillian spoke with difficulty, but determination. If, even so, I still want to stay by your side, even if it's just as your secret lover. I opened the door and sat on the sofa. 10 minutes, I said. You need to explain everything you've been hiding from me. If there's a single lie, I will never see you again. Do you want me to start from when I secretly admired you in high school? Cillian asked. I almost fell off the sofa. What? Cillian glanced at me and said that he noticed me since we entered school together. Because I was a student sponsored by the Wick Charity Foundation, he had been quietly observing me without my knowledge. Aren't you childhood sweethearts with Rachel Bailey? I have known her for a long time, but the rumor about us dating was spread by her. I interrupted him. Then why do you have Rachel's ID photo in your wallet? Cillian thought for a moment and said that Rachel intentionally left it there in front of others. Due to this lie, many people stopped harassing him, so he never clarified it. As for why he didn't remove it later, it was simply because he forgot about the photo hidden in a compartment. I observed you for 3 years, thinking I was just curious about you. But when other boys confessed to you, I felt angry, realizing that I had fallen for you. I had prepared for a long time to confess, but it was close to the college entrance exam. After the exam, my family went bankrupt. Later, at the bar, you sat in front of me. When you wanted to take me home, I was angry, but I didn't want to refuse you. If I refuse you, what if you went to someone else? And that incident was really embarrassing. Cillian continued, saying that was actually the happiest time for him. Until after graduation, he joined the Voyage group, and the revenge plan buried deep in his heart gradually took shape. Rachel came back to the country to find Cillian for cooperation. She held deep hatred towards her dad and stepmom due to her biological mom's difficult childbirth. Cillian initially didn't want to agree to her proposal, but compared to the entire Voyage group, he was indeed too insignificant just after graduating. Opportunities are fleeting. If he really gave up on this line with Rachel, he didn't know how much time he would waste on revenge. After weighing the pros and cons, Cillian agreed to cooperate with Rachel. His identity as a son-in-law could indeed help him gain Mr. Bailey's trust more quickly, thus infiltrating the Voyage group internally. Cillian said he had thought about telling me, but only after all issues were resolved. The only thing he didn't expect was a sudden earthquake, and Rachel was about to take away the house he had prepared for me. That night, he asked me to wait at home, but he actually prepared another house key for me, the key to the villa his family had mortgaged. He had already found evidence of Voyage group's illegal activities. After everything was over, he would have a real home with me, but despite all his calculations, he didn't anticipate that night I died. It was then that he finally realized how wrong everything he had done was. In despair, he attempted suicide but failed, and eventually turned over a new leaf. 2 years later, he saw an interview with me on TV. Just a profile shot made him drop the prayer beads in his hand. Cillian looked at me, his eyes misty. Josie, you have no idea. Since the moment I knew you were still alive, nothing else mattered to me. Compared to being with you, nothing worldly is important to me. I still refused him. Cillian, the past is long gone, and I no longer have the same feelings as before. And I am very satisfied with my current life. I stared directly into his eyes. If you truly love me, then you should completely disappear from my life. I didn't think I was being unreasonable, but Cillian's face turned pale in an instant, and when he left, he looked as forlorn as an abandoned dog. At night, I couldn't fall asleep in bed. The dozens of scars on Cillian's wrist kept haunting my mind. I lied to Cillian, and I lied to myself. Can the past really be completely forgotten? In fact, it was fine when he wasn't around, just day by day building a wall in my heart. But as soon as he appeared, that wall collapsed instantly with a loud crash. But it's okay, not only am I tough with my words, but also ruthless with myself. I messaged Oded, saying that I would be going to another city for future work to conduct research and see if we could open another branch. He replied with an okay. The procedures for going to another city were quickly completed. The day before leaving, I checked social media for the last time. I saw Cillian's post. I remembered he never used to post updates. I casually clicked on it, but as soon as I saw the picture clearly, I immediately sat up with a whoosh, because he posted a bunch of lethal doses of sleeping pills. I hurried back, almost smashing Cillian's door down. I also called him numerous times. Before long, Cillian, wearing a bathrobe, finally opened the door. Are you out of your mind? I shouted. Cillian smiled instead, with water droplets still on the side of his neck, looking down at me. You just realized it? He said calmly. His gaze on me was like a fine net, silently enveloping me. When I came to my senses, Cillian was already holding me by the waist. "You can push me away," he said calmly. "But Josie, I can only live because of your love for me. Instead of living like a walking corpse as I did in the past few years, I would rather die. So please don't leave me, okay?" Suddenly, a pitter-patter sound came from outside. It was raining. I turned my head away. "Yuri threatening me. No, I'm begging you to love me." He had completely worn out my patience, so I could only advise him. "You really don't need to do this, Cillian. There are plenty of people who love you." Cillian looked at me, the light in his eyes gradually dimming. "Sorry," he smiled hastily, "for making you witness such a joke." He let go of me and walked back into the room. I subconsciously followed him inside. The room was designed in a minimalist all-black style, with a thick carpet on the bedroom floor. "Why haven't you left yet?" "I'm waiting for you to stabilize mentally," I said cautiously. Before that, I didn't dare to leave his side. Cillian didn't speak again, and started to take off his bathrobe on his own. "Actually, there's no need to go through all this trouble," he suddenly said. "I've never asked you to be responsible for me, so let's give it another try." Cillian came closer again, his eyes looking pitiful yet dangerous. "I promise, I won't tell Eric." I might have really lost my mind. Not only did I not refuse his request to give it a try, but I kept trying until 5 in the morning. When I fell into a deep sleep, Cillian seemed still very restless. He would occasionally get up, touch my eyes or hair, as if to make sure I was still alive. When he touched my eyelashes for the 80th time, I finally couldn't help but explode, my voice unusually hoarse. "Stop it, Cillian. Do you have to disturb me like this and not let me sleep?" While apologizing, Cillian pulled me tightly into his arms. By noon when I woke up, Cillian had already prepared my clothes and everything for the day. There was a pot of porridge cooking in the kitchen, with a savory scent of seafood. The plane was at 4 in the afternoon, and I didn't plan on missing it. Without telling Cillian, I opened the door and walked out. I took a few big steps outside, suddenly feeling like I was back to the day 4 years ago when I left Cillian and went to City S. I don't think I ever told Cillian why I approached him in the first place. When I was 11, my parents died from a work injury, and I was sent to live with my aunt. I lost most of my memories. I just remember being treated like trash, kicked around from here to there. Just when things started to settle down, my uncle turned out to be a creepy middle-aged man who always leered at me with uncomfortable eyes. One day, taking advantage of being drunk, he sneaked into my room in the middle of the night. When I resisted, I found a fruit knife under the pillow. I didn't want to live, so I stabbed him. Blood gushed out, and my uncle fell back with wide eyes. I thought I had killed him with the stab. In fear, without even wearing shoes, I ran out in a daze. I almost ran into a normally driving car. The driver cursed at me for being careless, and a quiet and handsome boy got out of the car. He didn't ask anything, just gave me some money to buy a pair of shoes. It was also him who gave me a business card with the contact information of the WIT Charity Foundation. I might be a clever scammer because all along, I've been deceiving myself. Because I was afraid of failure, I always wanted to maintain a good-looking facade. Actually, I fell for Cillian a long time ago. I couldn't deceive myself anymore and turned back to return to Cillian's house. He stared at me blankly, hiding the fruit knife in his hand behind him. I pretended not to see the knife and just said to him, "I'm flying to City B at 4 in the afternoon." Cillian looked visibly disappointed but nodded. I continued, "This time, do you want to come with me?" Cillian was completely stunned. After a moment, he showed a bright smile. "Yes, wherever it is, I'll go with you."